Howdy, everybody. This is Carolee with Conversations with a Vet. Want to take a moment, thank everybody for joining tonight. Hopefully, you've had a great weekend up to this point. You're able to get some food in your bellies. We're going to go ahead and add a little bit of some music, because who doesn't like music? Let's see. There we go. So we had kind of a busy weekend this weekend. So had a funeral to go to this weekend for a young friend of ours, 18 years old. And that was on Friday. So that was pretty much the entire day because we did have to travel for it and come back. And then, boy, let me tell you, today I just had no energy to do anything. Just kind of sat there for the most part. Did get a couple of videos taken care of. But that was pretty much about the extent of what I did today. So I'm excited to introduce my guest tonight. As far as I'm concerned, he would be family. And of course, that's because he is a Marine, and we have two Marines in the family. So if you're out here and there's anybody else paying attention, listening right now, go ahead, give me a thumbs up in the chats. We're going to go ahead and get started in just a moment. We'll give a few more minutes for everybody to jump on. All righty. So, as I said, we do have my guest backstage. His name is Wayne Wilson. He is a Marine. So, hand pink wave. It's interesting, Jason. So what this says is that it says hand pink waving instead of the emoji of a pink hand waving. That's always funny. Okay, so let's welcome Wayne Wilson to the stage. Wayne, how are you?
Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing really good. Doing good. Just trying to get some motivation, get myself moving. And then it's all back to a normal week next week or tomorrow. And, is on vacation for about 2 weeks. And yeah, last week was a really short week. So Monday was a holiday for us. And then, of course, Friday we had the funeral. So just trying to get back in the swing of things. And oh my gosh, it's difficult.
Yeah, definitely.
So, how was your Christmas, by the way, and your New Year?
Christmas was very busy. We went to my parents and then my in-laws and kind of drove all over the place. New Year's was we celebrated right at about 7:30 and went to bed by 8.
There you go. That's okay.
I have a 1-year-old, so he's kind of dictates how our schedule goes at the moment.
It's amazing how they do that, and they'll do it for years to come.
Sure.
My dad always said, never teach him to walk or talk.
Fair enough.
I know, it's kind of crazy. The time will fly really quickly for you. I always said that the time went by based off of their milestones, so when they started, rolling over and crawling and eating solid food in first grade or kindergarten, first grade, and so on. And it just seems to go by so fast with kids.
Sure.
And you blink in the eye and boy, they're 18 and on their own, or at least, doing their own thing. So, so make sure to cherish those little ones. Most definitely. So I really appreciate you coming on today and, having a conversation with me. And you, as I said, while you were backstage, I have 2 Marine boys. So as far as we're concerned, your family. So that's, kind of how us Marine moms are.
Semper Fi. Yeah.
Indeed. I actually have, so I believe it's next week. I also have another Marine coming on.
Oh,
So I know it seems we've been like Air Force and Army on the show for quite a bit. So certainly happy to kind of mix it up some. I
fair
really
enough.
want to see have a conversation with a veteran Space Force, but I don't know. Are there? I guess there are some veterans already for Space
I
Force,
I
but
guess it's been just long enough, so maybe.
it feels like it's only been
Yeah.
like a year or two, truthfully.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you don't hear anything
Mm.
about them at all.
No. No, you really
So
don't. Yeah.
yeah, so it's quite interesting to see how this is, you know, going to go and um, hear their stories when they're out. But I know if you've never heard of Mind Overland, they are a nonprofit, not for profit, that does overlanding. So they take veterans out 6 trips a year
Mm.
and primarily on the East Coast to different areas out there. And I know I've had several of the founders that have been on the show because they're all veterans. And yeah, so if you have an opportunity, check them out as well because that's a really good resource for the veterans that we have. So
Very
check
cool.
them out if you like to get outdoors and hit the trails. Certainly check them out. So
Excellent.
tell me a little bit about your upbringing. What was your family life like?
Um, well, I'm an only child. Um, I was born and raised in Riverside, California, in Southern California.
Okay.
Um, so my childhood was pretty normal. No real, nothing negative. Didn't I don't have issues with my parents, none of that typical
You're
like
spoiled
stuff.
kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, to a certain degree. Yeah. But my childhood was pretty good. I as a kid I kind of got into soccer and then kind of moved from soccer into archery, and we spent a lot of time doing archery and doing competition shooting actually,
Nice.
um, throughout California and as far as to Utah. Um,
Fun.
and then at the same time, I was also in the Boy Scouts, became an Eagle Scout. Um,
Look at you. That's
I
awesome.
think, thank you. I think most of my childhood was kind of geared towards military. My parents did not serve. My parents were actually more theater people.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
that's
We
how
like
they
theater
actually,
people.
yeah. No, that's how they actually met was on the stage, um, doing a
Any
show
show
together.
that we would know?
Uh, Probably not. The show specifically was called Kismet. Um, it's a
Uh-uh.
older. My dad. My dad has like he has a bachelor's in performing arts, and
Nice.
so he's a beautiful voice. So he kind of did a lot of musicals. Kind of grew up around the theater myself, not really doing it myself, but going to the shows and whatnot. Um,
Yeah, I remember because my husband and I we did dinner theater
oh, okay.
shows and for the community, and I remember dragging our kids along. And in fact, when I directed one of them, I had a bunch of kids in the plays that we did. So
Hmm.
just to help keep track of them when we were, it just made sense to me.
Dinner theater can be very difficult, that's for sure.
It's
Yeah.
definitely a challenge, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, Joviq, welcome. Thank you for joining. So, I have Wayne here. Wayne is a Marine veteran. So, we're really excited to have him on board today. Um, so, Wayne, tell me a little then about your education. Then, was it just your standard? How were you in standard education? How were you in school?
Um, so standard education, I didn't wasn't in wasn't in honors classes or anything by that, but I definitely did pretty decent. I kind of was really motivated to become a Marine, um,
And
to
what
the point.
motivated you?
I,
What was it that caught your attention about the Marines?
for me specifically, I craved that camaraderie and the brotherhood, and I always felt that the Marine Corps, everything that I had seen, not only in John Wayne movies or whatever, but everything that I had seen in movies, but also in person, I always felt that there was a stronger bond with Marines. So I just kind of that's kind of what pushed me in that direction. So
Now, you were from California, so you were near one of the bases then?
not super close. I was actually pretty close to a air base, March Air Base, but not super close to the Marine Corps base, Camp Pendleton.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
but still plenty of Marines around.
Yeah, that I could see, especially there in California. Um,
Yeah,
you know, back and forth, different places that they go.
sure.
So you graduated well, good grades,
Yeah, yeah.
studious.
I was actually I was really motivated to join the Marine Corps, so I was actually even trying to graduate early, but they wouldn't let me. So my freshman, sophomore, junior year, I was taking extra classes. So I don't know how it works in other high schools, but in mine we had a zero period,
Mhm.
a class that was before, and then I took a class like during summer just to try and knock out all my education.
Nice.
Um, by the time I got to my senior year, they wouldn't let me graduate early. So I ended up having one, core class, which was in English literature, and then all of my other classes were electives. So I literally just sat around in the ROTC uh, uh,
Isn't that
area for,
great?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
so you were under the impression that if you took these courses on your own
Hmm.
time, basically, you
Yeah.
would be get credit for those and be able to graduate early. And they all of a sudden said, they put a complete kibosh on that for you.
Yes. Yeah. So whatever. The way that I viewed it is because I was able to leave at lunch every day.
Mhm.
So it just gave me more time, basically a whole year of just running and working out and kind of physically preparing for boot
Right.
camp. So
So did you do the pulley program at all?
I did. Yeah.
You did. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We met once a week, went for a run or whatever, type of thing that the recruiter had planned for us for that week. So
Yeah. Yeah. And did you find that that made it easier when you started through boot camp?
it did. Yeah. Only in the sense that not necessarily mentally, because mentally I think I was already very prepared because I spent most of my childhood, I'm gonna go change, but it definitely helped in the sense of the little things. Recruiter kind of, hey, you need to fold your socks this way,
Right.
or little things that kind of help you to the point where you don't have to think about it when you're already overwhelmed with all this other stimulus, that is boot camp. So
Right. And they're screaming and yelling at you the whole time, and you're trying to figure out what it is that they asked you to do a second ago, and now they're screaming something new at you at the same time, and you're like,
yeah,
I
yeah.
know. My Our middle child went through the Pooley program,
Hmm.
and they had a they he really had a great recruiter and recruiter's office as a whole. But I remember they were training at that time. They were doing 2 days a week,
Okay.
and he, it was a lot of running. It was a lot of running with weight. It was the uh, pull-ups and push-ups, and it was sit-ups, and then they went to plank.
Hmm.
So just hitting those goals. And it's so funny because he had really wanted to do Navy after
Mhm.
the Chris Kyle movie came out.
Okay.
He wanted to be a sniper, a Navy SEAL sniper. That was his thing. And he couldn't ever get them to call him back. And we were at a football game, a high school football game, and the Marine recruiters were there. And they
Mhm.
had, a pull-up bar, and they had their fancy decked out truck and a tent and things like that. So he went over and he was telling him, his oldest brother is a Marine as well. And so he's trying to do the pull-ups, and I've got a video of him trying to do a pull-up, and he couldn't do it. So to see how far he'd come over that course of a year while he was
Sure.
in that program, the Pooley program, is really impressive to me to see. And they really hammered, the make sure that they knew their ranks and the
Mhm.
ranks really well, and how to address them, and what the etiquette was, and so on and so forth. So in their mind, when they went, it would be more of a, not quite a vacation, but it sure wouldn't be that bombardment of stuff that they had to try and learn again
Right.
firsthand. So it
Right.
was it was nice for him to be able to go through that. And even to this day, they still check up on him, and make sure he's doing okay. So we're
That's great.
really
Yeah.
really happy with this particular recruiter. So
Nice. That's good.
so what kind of stories then do you have from boot camp? Anything that stands out that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened?
Um, Man, boot camp.
Or did you just
I
put it out of your mind because you're like, oh, I'm so glad I'm done with that?
Yeah. No, I throughout boot camp, I was that one recruit that the drill instructors kept on questioning whether or not I was one of theirs. Um, because I kind of just I played it in the shadows, if you will. I try to stay out of the limelight, do everything I was told, and not make waves, not make my name known. Um, it even got as far as at my time in boot camp, there were only 3 phases. Now there's more phases. Um, but in my time, when it came time for, I was in 3rd phase. We were coming up on graduation week, and they were gathering names, and I was the company high shooter. Um,
Nice.
and and I remember my senior drill instructor come walking out of the duty hut, yelling out, "Who the is Wilson?" And I come running up, this I am Staff Sergeant. Looks at
This
me, he's like,
recruit.
"Yeah, no, not right then," because at that point they like the last week or so they try and get you out of that mindset.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
but yeah, I definitely had that moment of my senior drill instructor looking at me like it was a joke from some other platoon. Having me spy at the hatch, if you will,
Yeah.
running around in there, but nope. So I stayed pretty low key throughout boot camp. I definitely have plenty of memories because I'm from the area, so I knew the area. So kind of sucked looking out and being like, I had a hamburger over there once, or whatever.
Right.
So,
Right. And
yeah.
so when you graduated boot,
Mhm.
and where did you go for your SOI, or
Camp Pendleton.
you
So
you stayed there?
yeah. So I was no 311 infantry
Hmm.
rifleman. Um, so I went to Camp Pendleton, went receiving for a couple weeks before I was picked up with a training company. I was in uh, Delta Company.
Okay.
Um, spent however long it was. I don't remember the time frames anymore, but spent my time there at Camp Pendleton and at the School of Infantry. Um, where I earned my designation as a 0311 infantry rifleman. Um, I don't really have any major stories from that one. It was just kind of a blur of, you know, running, gunning, and carrying heavy stuff, and just learning what it
Hmm.
is to be a infantry rifleman marine,
Right.
rifleman. Um, but I additionally from there I went to further training. Um, I went to so part of my contract was security forces. And
Nice.
in order to become a part of security forces, you have to have a O3 designation.
Hmm.
Um, so when they sent me to Chesapeake, Virginia. Um, did a bunch of stuff out there, and all my initial training, my entry level training through the basic security guard course and all that stuff. And eventually pushed on to, I was assigned with, I don't know what they're currently called, but at that time I was a part of FAST company.
Yep.
So FAST, Fleet Anti-Terrorism Security Team.
Hmm.
So I was with Second Fast, Sixth Platoon. Um, and then that's where the real adventure started.
So, okay. So what kind of adventure did you have?
Um, so so through Fast Company, for those of you who are not familiar, Fast Company, they at that time, I don't know how the structure is now, so I can't speak on currently. So I'm talking about 2006, 2007, that time frame.
Okay.
Um, at that time, we would basically go to Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. We'd spend a couple months on the fence line doing guard work, basically, doing security patrols throughout Cuba, throughout Guantanamo Bay. Um, and then additional duties where you would forward deploy to certain areas, and then you would act kind of basically as a quick reaction force for that command, that area. So
Hmm.
for me specifically, when I got to Fast Company, we did a bunch of training, went to advanced urban combat school, close quarter combat school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Did anti-riot control training. That's where I received my first TBI uh,
Ah,
through a
what
training
happened?
accident.
What happened?
So we're you have the line of riot shields, right?
Hmm.
I was a rioter, so I was out there pushing, shoving, screaming, throwing eggs,
Oh, that's fun.
causing chaos. Super long story short, I just saw an opening, so I decided to take it. And when I went running through it, I broke the line. Um, I somehow got a baton to the head.
Oh,
Um, yeah, like right above, just below this eyebrow and right above the eye. So I got hit, had to get stitches and all that fun stuff.
so you were in medical for a while?
For a short time, I was light duty in the sense I had to step out of training for about a week or so, but I was still out there with the guys doing what I could.
Right,
Um,
right.
but
Wow.
yeah, kind of that little event started off my journey of headaches and all that fun stuff. But
Not fun.
that's
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 not
how they
fun.
go. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
so you made it through Fast Company?
Yeah, yeah. So I did my platoon, we went to Gitmo for a couple months, Guantanamo Bay. Um, spent some time down there. Beautiful place. It was kind of a week on, a week off. The week off, you weren't actually off. You were still training, doing stuff, but you weren't
Right,
on
right.
the fence line. Um, but they gave us some time, so I was able to get my scuba license there, and that was a great experience.
Nice.
Um,
You talk about Gitmo being a really pretty, beautiful place.
mhm,
I guess I never associated those two things together. Uh,
sure. Yeah.
I think mentally it's just, because you envision that's where everybody was held, and the base and such. And so to have,
So so the prison that you're speaking of is very small.
is it?
Um, it's not the size of the base. It's a very, very small chunk of the base. Um, I can't speak too much on the prison
Of
itself
course,
because
right.
well, no, honestly, they didn't allow Marines anywhere near there. Um,
Really?
yeah, I don't know this for a fact, but what we were told was that the prisoners there, if they saw Marine Corps Marpat camouflage, they would either hunger riot or they would somehow riot because they did not like Marines. I don't know that for a fact, but that's what we were told. So
Huh.
I can't confirm on that
Right.
aspect.
That's interesting though when you to think about.
Yeah.
Hmm. So,
Yeah.
okay, so you did your time there at
Mhm.
Guantanamo Bay, and
Yeah.
then where did you head to?
Rota, Spain. So we spent, I don't know, 9 months or so in Rota, Spain, something like that.
Wow.
And that was amazing. While we were in Rota, we took place in multiple operations throughout EUCOM, the European Combat Command.
Okay.
Um, did a lot of training operations with other nations. So that was a very unique experience. Um,
Was there a particular nation that you really liked training with over another?
the Spanish and the Grecians, the Greek Navy SEALs that we trained with, they were
Oh, wow.
incredible guys. Um, the Spanish Marines that were attached to us, they were like our sister platoon, if you will.
Hmm.
We got to know them really well. They were a great group of guys. Very interesting to see the different tactics, um, for room clearing and going about how every country basically develops a different way of doing the same
Right.
thing.
And
Um,
so did
yeah.
either one, did you guys like maybe pick up something from them and use or kind of try and practice a little bit with and see how it worked or vice versa?
Sure. Yeah, because we had a lot of rope houses, mock houses that we would train in. So we definitely. I didn't necessarily pick up any tactics, if you will, from other countries, but they definitely picked up a lot from us. Um, because the biggest thing is we would ask whatever country it was, all right, clear this room, and it was just purely how do they go about it, and then we critique,
Okay.
and it was very interesting to see the plethora of ways of going about clearing a room. Some of them, many of them, not very good, but
Kind of
uh,
chaotic.
chaotic and also kind of like I would never do that ever. Um,
Things not to do.
yeah, yeah. See, honestly, it seemed like a lot of them took their tactics off of watching I don't know, Charlie's Angels or something, some it was kind of bad. But
That's funny. I just see the three women, standing there with
yeah,
me.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
hilarious.
But yeah, while we were there in Rota, we went all throughout various countries throughout the Mediterranean. Um, we ended up doing some, nothing actually happened, but we did some quick reaction stand up for President Bush when he was doing a tour throughout Northern Africa.
Okay.
Um, um, yeah, it was a very unique experience, doing that because I was able to meet a lot of people from different countries, travel to a bunch of different countries, um, and just kind of see, you know, how people live outside of the United States.
Any place you want to go back to that you've been to now?
Hands down, Spain. I love Spain. I was in the south of Spain. That's where
Okay.
Rota is. It's on the kind of real close to the Strait of Gibraltar, the entrance into the Mediterranean. Um,
Nice.
so it's gorgeous down there, old cobblestone streets and
That I bet
all of
that's
that.
really nice to see. That's really
Yeah.
pretty, I bet.
Yeah.
So did you come up or I know obviously you would be eating Spanish foods, a lot of
Hmm.
Spanish foods. Was there anything in particular that you really enjoyed that you kind of brought that recipe back with you?
No.
No.
I was um I do remember that the one thing that I had that I'd never had before was bison. Um
Oh,
and that
they had
was
bison there?
yeah, they
Wow.
have all sorts of cattle there. But
Huh.
they had bison at one of the restaurants that we went to, and it was like the best steak I've ever had. So I remember that one vividly. But at the same time, Marines being Marines, I was also doing a lot more bar hopping than culture,
Yeah. Yeah.
checking out the culture. So yeah, it was a good time though. There in Rhoda. So
Nice. And then after that?
after that, came back to the States, and then we PCS to different units. Um, so for me specifically, I came back here to the to the West Coast, straight to Camp Pendleton to Second Battalion, Fifth Marines, where I was assigned to Fox Company, the Black Hearts.
Okay.
Um, and for Fox Company, we were the boat company. So we were doing all the combat rubber reconnaissance craft training,
Hmm.
which is basically like the little 8-man size Zodiac rubber boat training.
Right. A
Um,
little black boat or dark
yeah,
gray here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I didn't have like a specialty. Some people become like scout swimmers or whatever the case may be.
Hmm.
I didn't have a specialty in that regard when it came to that aspect of the company. Um, but with 2-5, we went through all that training. Um, we eventually deployed to the 31st MEU, based out of Okinawa, Japan.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Um, so while we were there, we took place in humanitarian efforts in the Philippines. Just typhoons converged, and we had to do some humanitarian effort because we had the rubber craft, so it was just helped. um,
Help to move the supplies and
yeah, yeah.
people and
But we also turned that into jungle warfare training while we were down there with the Filipino Marines. So
oh
that
wow.
was a good time. Um,
So how are they pretty equivalent to the U.S. Marines?
oh yeah, yeah. They have the same exact structure, um, pretty much the same, almost identical, except for the uniform. Um, the thing about the Philippines is a lot of I mean, obviously we had a huge presence, U.S. military presence in the Philippines for a number of years. Um,
Right.
yeah. But I don't know, I had a good time with them,
Nice.
so
I'm going to interrupt her a little bit. So
yeah,
Ron Wayne said, with a name like Wayne, you know he's an awesome guy. So just saying. So had to throw that
thanks, Ron.
out there, of course. Um, so when did you Well, how many years did you serve then?
5 years.
You did 5?
Yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
after after the 31st MEU, we came back, and the day we got back from post-deployment leave, they asked they asked for 120 volunteers to go to Afghanistan, and I raised my hand,
wow.
not thinking to ask when are we going, um, the next week. So
Oh,
yeah, we had to sign some paperwork to waive our time in between deployments, and then found myself in Marja, Afghanistan a couple weeks later.
and how'd
So
that go?
that was hot and dusty, and all the stuff that comes with it. Um,
Kind of an eye opener.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Eye opener in many regards. You know, all the all the stuff that comes with Afghanistan that you can think of. Um,
Sand in the shoes and
yeah,
clothes and
moon
yeah.
dust and all that. Yeah, weird dogs and all that. Weird insects. I swear you could like have an entire X-Files episode on just the insects in Afghanistan.
So,
Yeah,
and I heard they have these like really massive spiders there.
the camel spider. They're not as
Yeah.
big as the ones in Iraq, but they're still massive spiders that you're just kind of. Am I in the? I remember the first time I saw one, I kind of was like, am I in Starship Troopers? Like what's going on here?
Yeah, spiders
Yeah.
and I, no, no, thank you. I'm pretty sure I've got arachnophobia. I don't do spiders well at all. Um, so I would, yeah, freak out. I do
Yeah.
remember years ago, I had watched a video of, and again, I don't know what branch military it was, but it was showing, the temporary barracks that were set up.
Mhm.
And there was, I don't know, 6, 7, 8, however many were in there. And this spider somehow was like crawling on something, and one of them saw it, and then they go screaming and things go flying, and then everybody's screaming and everybody's jumping on beds and so on and so forth. It was just crazy. I was like, that would be me.
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
so
I
what was the
remember
food like over there?
um I I couldn't really speak on that. I mainly had MREs and
The safer
um
bet?
yeah, well, just the situations, it just didn't really call. The closest I came was we spent a little bit of time in on a very small squad size forward operating base, and the closest we came to their local cuisine was one of the Afghanistan chickens, which is a huge chicken. So kind of took some chicken and grilled it up. You know, we didn't really have a grill, so Marines being Marines, we improvise, overcome, and adapt. But
That's right.
uh, no, for the most part, it was just talking about as far as food goes, just having good old MREs. So, and then the rare trip to the chow hall when you're in the rear. So,
Right. Yeah. So you came back after Afghanistan. Was that your last
yeah, yeah, that was my last
travel?
deployment. Yeah,
Okay. And
yeah.
so, how did your um, transition go back into civilian life? What kind of resources then did they have for you, or did they?
Right. So I've heard it's better now, but we had the transition assistance program, the TAP program, and when I went through it, it just felt like a check in the box training, like it wasn't actual help, you know.
Right.
But the problem is at the time I didn't know that. at the time I thought, oh, this is good information. This is truly going to help me. Um, kind of wasn't wasn't that great now that I've been there, done that. I'm
Right.
older now and
You
survived,
know
but
better.
yeah. Um, that like at first it was a good time. I had a pretty decent transition at first, because I had a buddy of mine. His dad called me, and he knew that I was getting leaving the Marine Corps, and he asked me, "Hey, can you come and help out at a local Boy Scout camp running the basically a high adventure program?"
Oh,
So like zip line, high ropes course, confidence course type thing. So it was a really good transition for myself because it was still structured, still had kind of a uniform, Boy Scout uniform. Um, but it really helped me change my vocabulary, if you will. Um, Coming from an infantry Marine,
yep.
being around Marines, and then next thing I know, I'm around a bunch of Boy Scouts. So,
Right. Yeah,
so
I can imagine the
yeah.
parents would be calling left and right.
Oh yeah, yeah. So it was definitely a good help for me because I had not a word slipped that entire time, but it was definitely had to catch myself multiple times with something I was about to say. Um, so that was a good time. Um, wasn't really till after that I kind of started to go through like into it like tough times. Um, I was never homeless. I didn't fall down that pathway, thankfully.
But
Um,
that's good.
but I definitely had some depression issues, in the sense that the way that I described it is, I got out and I had that DDT 14, and I'm like, I got the golden ticket, and then the magic kind of wears off, and you're like, man, I went through a bunch of stuff, you all
Hmm.
just spent the last 40 minutes listening to me talk about it, and now I'm kind of like in a mundane job. What do I do now?
Right.
And
So how did you deal with that?
uh, at the time, lots of beer, um, lots of beer and whiskey. Um, I still drink, but not nowhere near the way that I was drinking at the time.
Hmm.
Um, I worked full time. Luckily, the job that I got, it was with BAE Systems and a contractor. Basically, I was around a bunch of fellow veterans that, luckily for me, they didn't really like hang out with me per se, because work is work, but they
Right.
kind of forced me. Hey, Marine, come over. One of the guys was a retired Navy chief. He pulls me up and says, "Hey, Marine," pulls me up onto the computer and just starts signing me up for a college. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'm gonna take college courses now. Um,
Yeah,
so
there's your structure.
yeah, yeah. So basically, at that time, I was working full time, and I was doing online classes at the time. Um, I eventually, at that particular job, I kind of fell into a different area of work because my boss at the time basically gave us a heads up that, hey, in a couple months, you're not going to have a job here. It would
Oh,
behoove you to start looking because they were doing away with my department. It wasn't just me, it was
right,
a,
right.
a group of us. So super long story short, I fell into the fire alarm industry, doing fire life safety work, because I used to have to escort the guys who were working on the security systems and the fire alarm systems, they kind of caught wind and they knew me and said, "Hey, my company's hiring apprentices." So that was my introduction into the trade industry, doing construction and all that. I was still dealing with issues, but I still had a job.
Right.
Um, I didn't let my issues affect my work. I just pushed through.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't until quite a number of years later after I got out of I left the Marine Corps in 2011. Um,
Okay.
so it wasn't until a couple years later, probably 13 or 14, that I started to see a therapist to try and help, with deal with my issues, you know. Um, Eventually, I fell into a group um, that we were doing training, um, basically like tactical training, for you will,
Okay.
for military, law enforcement, and civilian. And it was at a place right in Escondido, California, where we had a facility where we could do force-on-force training, um, using simulated munitions, and it was a great time. Um, that kind of was my real path to healing, um, being around vets that I could truly relate to. I had been around vets before, but none that I could truly relate to because most of them were admin or
Right.
a cook or whatever the case may be, but nothing coming close to what I had been through and the experiences that I had been through. So that company was called Warfighter Academy, and I became a instructor with them, um, part time. I wasn't I was still working full time construction, all that, but in the evenings and the weekends I would do this training. Um, so that kind of was a huge help. Um, Pushing forward, I eventually met my wife, my future wife. She is not a vet. She happens to go to she and I went to the same high school together. Didn't really know each other in high school, but just the way it laid out.
Very, yeah, that's
Um,
exciting.
yeah, but when that happened, my life kind of changed for the better. Found a new purpose,
Hmm.
and for quite a while, before we were married, my now wife, she moved in with me before that, and we traveled all over the place, checking out different experiences and all that, and eventually stumbled across a brewery called Spec Hops Brewing.
Where are they out
Um,
of?
they don't exist anymore. They
Oh,
they had to unfortunately close their doors a while back, but they were out of Vista, California.
okay.
Um, but we came across that place, and to a certain degree, I'd kind of found my home away from home. Um, the owner, he was one of the owners, he was a Marine, um,
Nice.
and his wife's an educator. Um, and we kind of hit it off. We're still very good friends with them.
Oh,
Um,
that's awesome.
and we see each other, have a, dinner, barbecue, cookout, whatever. But at the time, Dave, he was kind of doing something similar to what you are doing right now,
Oh, okay.
but not through any platform. It was more of he had a little sound booth in the brewery that you could go and sit down with a beer in hand or whatever, and kind of have a conversation just like we're having. Um, and he
That's
would
really
he would
cool.
film it, document, and that's kind of how we met. And eventually, he asked the two of us. We basically came up with this. this idea of putting together a monthly gathering at the brewery for veterans, and we eventually came up with the name of Vet Together. So with Vet Together, it that's really how it was born, was over a beer. Um, but we 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 had these monthly events where we would take a veteran and basically give that veteran a platform to speak on their business or their nonprofit or their whatever venture they were doing at that time.
Hmm.
So at the time, my very first veteran, his name was Brady Pasola, and at that time he was running a nonprofit called Triple B Adventures, and it was very similar to that nonprofit you were talking about in the beginning.
Like
Um,
overlanding.
yeah, but not necessarily overlanding it, but just getting out into the outdoors, for a day hike or just a car camp or something like that. So very similar, not quite the same, but very similar. Um,
That's awesome.
but essentially, that's what Vet Together evolved into, where we had a veteran that we would focus on for the month, and give them a platform to talk about their real estate business, their whatever business, or venture that they were in. Um, Now, eventually, Spec Hops had to close, um, due to multiple reasons. The beer industry, the microbrewery industry in San Diego is nuts. Um, you see them pop up, and then a couple months later, they go away. It's just
Right.
unfortunately the way it goes. But yeah, we really pushed. Basically, we developed a team of vets that we kind of put together these free events. We're not paying for your beer or anything, but it was just we'd have the venue, come hang out, you know.
Right.
Um, and eventually, that's where our real mission came together. Um, that what I'm about to say is for all you veterans out there. And it's always my piece of advice that I try to give to current active duty or veterans who have kind of lost their way right now. Um, when you were active duty, you had to check into a unit. For the Marine Corps, for many of us, you're given a literal checklist, a piece of paper. Go to this office, go to yada, 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 check in, check in, check in, check in. When you leave that unit, you're given the same piece of paper with the check-in side. Well, there's another column with the check-out side. So you check out of that unit. Um, so some of us, we see multiple units. Some of us only see one unit. Um, but basically, when you go to get out of the military, you check out, and now I'm pushed into the civilian world, and what do I do? I don't have a
Right.
check-in list. I don't have a check-in list to be a civilian. Um, so that's where my piece of advice comes out to everybody, is to find your new unit and check in. Um, Whatever that unit may be, whether it be camp, find a group that likes to go out hiking or camping, or find a knitting club or a book club, or whatever the case, whatever your interest is, you have to find it. But whatever that is, it doesn't have to be with fellow vets. It helps, but it doesn't have to be with fellow vets. Just get out there and find a new group, find a new tribe, find a new unit, whatever you want to call it. Check in, and that for me is the biggest piece of advice I could give to somebody who is lost right now and trying to find their way.
Boy,
Um,
that's really great advice, and really makes a lot of sense, because the military is meant to break you down and build you back up to what they want. and
Yeah.
that's somebody who is going to, follow orders, do exactly what they say without question, and then coming back into civilian life when you don't have orders to follow. I
Yeah.
think, that feeling of lost. I don't know what to do with myself. I don't know what to do with my time. I mean, I've been told when to wake up, when to go to bed, et cetera, for, years on end. And uh, I don't know what to do or how to deal with that. So I think you make a really valid point that you need to find something or someone that, has the similar, like hobbies, or find a hobby,
Right.
find something that it is going to make you happy.
Right.
I can say, if you haven't, already watched the show, I had a gentleman on, um, so a month or two ago, by the name of Lee Deckelman, and he actually ended up starting his own yoga
Mm.
classes. So he does free yoga for veterans. And it was kind of his way of calming the overactive mind and that constant thought of, wanting to just take people out, and just,
Yeah.
calming down and calming the thoughts and calming that mind, and being more mindful. So he actually, that's what he does, and he started that. um, and yeah, I know we've got a lot of veterans that come on and talk. They all have different uh, stories on how it is that they've managed to overcome all of that
Hmm.
in their, being inside their head so much.
Sure.
Several, were very fortunate where when they got out, they already had a job waiting for them. So it was kind of in, you're in one, you come right out into another kind of structure
Right.
that kept them focused and motivated. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. So tell everybody then where they can find you on Facebook, and again, the purpose of your Facebook page, for example.
Right. So I'm gonna preface this. Vet Together is we've kind of we're in a bit of a hiatus at the moment. Combination of COVID, the pandemic, and also me having a 1 year old. Um,
They take a lot of time.
yes. Right now, as far as the social media presence, we're on Instagram and Facebook, and you just look up Vet Together with a one T vet, VET, and then spell out together, just only one T. And you'll find us on Facebook and Instagram. For the most part, right now, it's just a meme sharing, trying to keep the humor going. Um, Nothing as impactful as it was a little while ago. Um, we do have plans to come back, not necessarily at breweries like we used to, because after that one brewery, Spec Hops, closed, we were placing putting our events together at veteran-owned establishments, to try and um, support that veteran.
Hmm.
But right now, my team and I, we are exploring other options because not everybody can be in that situation where beer is easy to get or
Right.
whatever. Um, so we're exploring other options without trying to take on the mission of other nonprofits or companies out there. Um,
Right.
so I don't want to give away too much yet, but there's some stuff in the works. Um,
Nice. And you'll
uh,
definitely keep me posted when you get where you're comfortable
y-
sharing that, so that
Definitely,
we can make
definitely,
sure to put that out there for others, for some
definitely.
resources. So how far away do you think you've got people subscribing to you through Facebook and Instagram from where you're at now?
You mean like geographically? Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, it's it's all over the nation and a couple people in other countries. Um, a lot. of I would say the average demographic is going to be the 20 to 30-year-old, and some older, but average is going to be around that. Mostly Marines, but also other branches. We have a couple people from the UK that follow us, UK veterans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we have kind of all over the place, but mostly US. Obviously, mostly based out of here in San Diego, Southern California area. We have plenty of people that are out in on the East Coast at, basically the big base area towns.
Right, right.
Um, yeah. Um,
Well, and if you want to, feel free at the end of this, you can actually, once it will automatically record, and then you can just copy the link and put it out there on your Facebook and Instagram pages for them. And
we
so
definitely
that,
will. Yeah.
yeah, so they know that there's some additional resources too,
Yeah,
and that, you guys are working towards some additional things. So that'll make
yeah,
them happy, I'm sure. Um,
definitely.
so, kind of going back, just a couple of additional questions. So,
Mhm.
how would you say your experience or your time in the Marine Corps has influenced your perspective on leadership in the civilian world? How's that help your mind?
That's a tough one because, being an infantry squad leader, you can't really do and say the same things that I would there versus the civilian world.
Right.
Um, but I definitely think that for me specifically, a combination of my Boy Scout background, Marine Corps background, and then working in the trades in the blue collar area and now in the more of the white collar side, being very well rounded and well versed in all of those areas, it's definitely helped me kind of, just knowing the needs of the group, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of each worker, um,
That's important.
and really knowing how far you can push somebody before you're going to get backlash. Um, that's not to say that, I'm out there with a whip, saying, "Hey, go, go, go," but um, you know, being able to give the right task to the right person
Yeah,
and knowing and recognizing that, I definitely would say I learned that from the Marine Corps. Um, I mean, to a certain degree, it's all different because I had Marines underneath me, and you're going to do what I tell you. But at the
right.
same time, you can look back and recognize the stuff that you did wrong and the stuff that you have done right.
And that's what
Uh,
makes a good leader when you think about it, because
right,
you're constantly trying to improve your
right,
leadership
yeah,
skills. So that makes perfect sense.
yes,
So,
yeah,
you talked about camaraderie, and that was one of the
hmm,
big reasons why you joined the Marine Corps, was the brotherhood and the camaraderie that you had seen.
yeah.
Um, so, with that being said, most people that I ask this question to say no, but are you still in contact with anybody, any of the recruits that went through boot camp with you?
Through boot camp.
Hmm.
Um, kind of. It's a yes and no question. One of the well, two of the guys that were in my boot camp platoon, the three of us just kind of worked out. We had all gone to high school together, and we were all good friends.
Nice.
Um, one of the guys, uh, he dropped, not dropped out, but he had a medical issue that kind of held him back a couple weeks. And he's a very good friend of mine. He was actually just visiting some last weekend, so
Oh, nice.
it was good to see him. The other individual, I just haven't we haven't really talked, not in a couple years at least, but
Right.
now that's a unique situation because we knew each other even before boot camp. Pretty much anybody else I know, as far as all the other recruits that were in my platoon. So.
You actually, it's interesting because I do have questions that, I've kind of pre-printed out and I'm looking at them as you were talking. And I was like, wow, you've hit on this, you've hit on this, you've hit on this, So one of them was, how do you think the Marine Corps' values such as honor, courage, and commitment have shaped your personal values and decision-making in your civilian life? And I think, you've touched on that a little bit already.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, honor, courage, commitment is definitely a huge one. And as well as Semper Fidelis, it definitely is I wouldn't say that I'm actively thinking those four terms every day, but they're definitely a driving force behind my actions at work and at home and in the personal life. That's an interesting question.
To make you think here.
yeah, definitely. But it definitely, that was actually part of my wedding vows, was using Semper Fidelis, always faithful, in speaking to my wife. And my vows to her is to be always faithful. And now looking at having a son, trying to teach and instill those values of honor, courage, and commitment into him. Right now it's a little tough because he just poops and pees and screams, but looking into instilling those values in him. But I find that for me the best way is I'm better at just showing than to try and teach it. So really trying to keep it in the back of my mind to uphold those values so that he can witness as he's growing up what a man should be,
That's a great idea, because a lot of times it's easier to teach by showing or doing than, because they pick it up, they visually see it, than just speaking it.
Sure.
So yeah, that makes perfect sense. So what, are there any other organizations that you might have been involved with outside of Vet Together that you've helped support for veterans and their families since you've left the Marine Corps?
Yeah. One of my very good friends, Perry Yee, he's a Navy SEAL veteran. He runs a nonprofit called Active Valor.
Okay.
So Active Valor, they pair veterans up with Gold Star children. And for those of you who don't know what that means that child has lost their parent overseas in a combat zone. So pairs us up, not for us to take over the duties of that deceased parent, that deceased loved ones, but more as like a big brother program, if you will, mentor mentee. So they have about quarterly, they have a big event that they'll put on and have us running around with the kid doing something, whatever it is. So it's been a huge impact for not only the children but the wives,
right,
because they're able to get together for a day and kind of talk.
And where is this out of?
San Diego.
San Diego as well. Okay.
Yeah, it's all based out of San Diego.
And you said that is, what's the name of that one?
Active Valor.
Okay. So I want to make sure, and that's out of San Diego.
Yeah.
Want to make sure that I can get some of those resources out there for others as well.
Another one, this is more of just a shout out for a buddy of mine. His name is Colin McDonald. He runs a kind of a gear outfitting company called Kit Fox Outfitters.
Hmm.
So a little shop up in Ramona, California, um, right on the Old Town Main Street drag. Can go and get your camping gear and all that fun stuff. He
Oh,
has
that
a
is
whole,
fun.
yeah, yeah. He has like a whole like thing that he says. I can't say, I don't know it, but it's he's a
It's
great
okay.
guy.
We won't hold your feet to the fire for
Yeah,
that. That's okay.
yeah.
And he's a
Um,
veteran as well.
yeah, yeah. He's a
Nice.
Marine. Yeah,
Nice.
he um Triple B Adventures, like I mentioned them before.
Hmm.
They get veterans out there camping, hiking, all that fun stuff. Um, some other, I'd be remiss in mentioning the VFW and the American Legion. Um,
Those are huge.
they're huge, and a lot of veterans, especially my age, don't realize that they're some of the only veteran organizations that have, they can speak to the Senate, they can speak to Congress, and they have a say. The problem is if their numbers go down too low, they no longer have a say at that level. So that's why it's very important to, if you're able to get involved with one of the two organizations. Um, I'm not going to try and push one city or one over
Right,
the other,
right.
but just keep it in mind. A lot of people, they have that stigma, and I had that stigma too, of thinking it's just an old man's drinking club. Um, I actually, uh, when I was in, when I was talking about when I was in depression and kind of looking, I was lost. I went to my local VFW at that time, walked in and just had the worst experience of my life. And I kind of, held that against the VFW for a long time, um, because it only takes one person to ruin an entire organization.
Right.
Um, so don't knock it is what I'm trying to get at. Those two organizations are great. They're great resources for veterans.
And yeah, so we'll make sure also for those of you listening that keep an eye on some of these organizations in the in the links where
Yeah.
it'll show all the other resources that are out there so far that I've come across, and we'll put some of them down in the comments for you as well. How would you say your time in the Marine Corps has shaped your understanding of service to the nation, and how do you continue to contribute to your community post service?
Right.
Excuse me.
For me, it's a little difficult, with with the way that we are as a nation at the moment. There's a lot of division. There's a lot of, without getting political,
Right.
there, staying apolitical here. There's a lot of division, and that's kind of the tough one for me to get around. That's why I generally focus more on veterans, because I know vets. Um, but it's also very difficult to get a, I'll just use the VFW as an example. To have the VFW be a face out in your local city.
Right.
Some cities are way easier to work with than others, um, but it can kind of be difficult to be out there and show your patriotism with the mentality that some of these individuals have, um, throughout the U.S. and here in San Diego. It can be very difficult to try and get that across to the youth and some of the older generation, um, mainly the youth. Um, you know, the division doesn't help. Division doesn't help at all with the future of America. And
Right.
it's I'm not saying that we need to all stand and be you know, brainwashed or whatever. But definitely being able to have a conversation without just screaming because you're wrong, you know, um, it's doesn't help. But in any case, for me personally, I that's why I generally just focus on where I feel more comfortable in helping the veteran community, if you will.
Right.
Um, I just it's a little more difficult to get outside of that, if that makes sense.
It
At
does.
least for
It
me.
does.
At least for
Yeah.
me. So,
Yeah. And because when you can focus on that, helping your fellow veterans,
mhm.
you're not, for one, focused on all the other stuff either.
Yeah.
So it does help. So, how would you say being a Marine has shaped your identity, and how are you able to balance your identity as a veteran with other aspects of your life?
That's that's a good question. I would definitely say that the Marine Corps has definitely shaped me in multiple ways. Um, Mainly the mentality. I still say sir and ma'am and all that. I still open the door for somebody who may need it. I don't just walk away. If I see something that needs to be done, I do it, even if I wasn't told to do it. I just see that, hey, this person needs help, so I'm gonna go try and help them. Um, of course, there's all the other stereotypes of the Marine. I have tattoos and all that stuff. And the beard. And, I have it also kind of depends on the situation. If I'm in a more comfortable situation where, say, I'm around a bunch of vets, I'm gonna act more stereotypical Marine than I
Right.
do normally, and that's just purely to just for fun.
Right.
Um, I would say that I've been able to recognize when and where to turn it off and turn it on, and what level to go,
What is
to
appropriate for
put
the
it out there.
situation?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So, as far as the Marine Corps, what are some lesser known aspects of the Marine Corps history or traditions that you think people should be aware of?
There are so many.
Because
Um,
they are rich in tradition.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's traditions behind the everything. Here's one. I'm sure a lot of people know it, but I always carry this, my my challenge coin. I always have it on me, always.
And
Um,
that was from when you graduated. So that was your,
no, no, this is actually my unit with Second Battalion,
oh,
Fifth
okay, two
Marines.
five. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha,
hmm
gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah, with right there.
Yep.
Anyways, uh, I always carry this coin on me. I've had it since I left the Corps. Um, this one is always with me. So that this coin I always carry with myself just as a reminder. Kind of, it's just for myself. If I start to have a rough time, I'll take it out of my pocket and kind of hold on to it for a couple minutes and kind of refocus, reset, and then go about my day. Um, but I'd say the challenge coin is a big one.
Hmm.
Um,
They have
for those of
challenge
you,
coins for everything.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I don't I don't really use it like I used to in the bar. That's you know the um,
Right.
but uh, man, I'm trying to think of other like histories, traditions, just interesting stuff. But this is the one that comes to mind.
And
Um,
that's a big one because you're
yeah,
right. I think most do carry one,
yeah,
or at least own a few for
yeah,
sure. That I can
yeah,
say for sure.
yeah.
Um, let's see. And you kind of, this question you've kind of talked a little bit about when you start talking about Fast Company and such. So
Mhm.
to be able to describe the role and significance of specific Marine Corps units like Force Recon, MARSOC, and the different unique contributions that they contribute to the Corps' mission.
Right. Um, yeah, for Fast Company, that was I was very proud to be a part of that.
Mhm.
We were stood up for a couple things, you know, like during the Arab Spring out in Lebanon, um, helping reinforce the embassy, you know, kind of just being that quick reaction force, ready
Right.
to deploy on within a moment's notice. Um, Pushing forward to my current, or not my current, but when I was with 2-5, a lot of people don't really think or know this, but with infantry units, um, each company kind of has a specialty that company focuses on. So
Right.
some are you know, like in the tracked vehicles, um, like the landing craft vehicles. Um, Others they'll focus on helicopter insertions or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Um, for me specifically, it was all water based, on the combat river reconnaissance crafts. So I can really only speak on my experiences. You know, I can't really talk about the air wing
Right.
or any of those. But
Right.
um, I was definitely proud of what I did do because I did a lot. I went all over the place. That's for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like you had quite an exciting and travel worthy
Hmm.
career during your time with the Marine Corps.
And
And go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say, not you know, not everybody gets that. I was one of the lucky few. Out of all the guys that joined the Marine Corps with me out of high school, I'm the only one who really traveled. Everybody else, they either didn't deploy at all or only deployed once to somewhere.
Right.
Um, so I was definitely you know, definitely a rare case, if you will. So,
Right. So Jason says that you and Killian would have a lot to talk about because Fast Company was his first company in the Marine Corps.
uh,
Um,
yeah.
and he actually was part of 2-4 out
Okay.
of Pendleton.
Hmm.
So, and as you're aware of that, the
Yeah.
situation with 2-4. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so definitely, I sent him a message, but it's for him to come on the show. But he's you know how it goes. He's still
It's all good.
active,
Yeah.
so he's running back and forth and all of
Doing
that.
things.
But
Yeah.
so let's see, what else do I have? Yeah, I guess another to me kind of an important question for you is what kind of advice would you have for any individual, male or female, who's considering a career in the Marine Corps based off of your own experiences and insights as a veteran?
Um, I would definitely say uh, master your body. Um, Mind will come, but master your body
You're talking
as
physical,
physical
exercise, things of that nature.
physical, and what I truly mean by that is master body weight exercises before you start focusing on lifting weights. Um, get those pull-ups, get those push-ups, get the crunches, get the running, get the
Mhm.
everything that you can do with your body, all the calisthenics, everything. Focus on that before you really truly start to focus on weightlifting. I saw a lot of guys that did the opposite and they didn't do well. Um, because
Because everything you're
it's a
doing
different
in the
workout,
Marine Corps
you
is
know.
all based off of your own body weight. I mean,
At
your
least
pull-ups,
initially, yeah,
right. I mean, but
yeah,
your pull-ups are your body weight. You're not,
yeah,
you're doing it push-ups are your own body weight and
right,
crunches and like you were saying, even plank, you're still holding your own body weight
right,
and trying to sustain for a certain period of time.
right. So
So
I definitely say master your body first. Um, mindset, like I said, will come. The Marine Corps will teach you your mindset. Um,
Whether you like it or
uh,
not.
yeah. Um, the other thing is definitely knowledge, and recruiter's going to help you with that, with a book of
Mhm.
knowledge, whatever you need to learn. But I would definitely say that, and also another big thing is to stand back and take a look at yourself and your mentality, which is very hard for people to do. So,
Right.
but stand back, take a look at your personality and your mentality to see how that's going to affect you working in a teamwork environment that is life or death. Um, because some people, they have that alpha personality that it's going to be a while before you can let that alpha personality out because you won't have the rank.
Right.
Um, so the big thing is being able to check your ego at the door, take a step back and learn how to follow orders before you can give orders. So,
That's great advice because especially nowadays, I mean, a lot of the younger generation that's coming in, they have a certain idea of what it should be. Um, I I think I mentioned this on my show that I had this last Thursday, I think it was, that there was an article that one of the Nashville news channels had
mhm,
posted about the Army recruits and going through basic, and they're complaining because for one they have no privacy, and two it's too hard, and
yeah,
so it's, I mean, I chuckle because, I mean, if all you want is something that's easy, you will never get anywhere in your life, right? I
mhm,
mean, you're not going to grow mentally. It's just everything given to you on a silver platter just doesn't work that way for most
right,
people. So,
right,
um, and then unfortunately, sometimes that's the way that they learn is, that's their first experience of
mhm,
the harsh realities of the military is
yeah,
when they first step into their basic training or boot camp or what have you, um, and they've got somebody yelling in their ear or screaming at their face and they have never experienced that before.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So it's almost like they want to they need to have somebody prep them for that
mhm,
beforehand.
yeah.
I think that's a
That
big thing.
for sure.
So
That's a huge thing.
yeah, but yeah, it makes perfect sense. To get right, like you said, check your ego at the door,
Mhm,
um, because everything is based on rank.
yeah,
Nobody wants your opinion unless they ask for it, et cetera, et cetera. And it's funny because those are all things back in my generation, that we were taught as kids. You don't speak unless spoken to.
mhm,
So yeah, children are best to be hidden away somewhere while the adults talk. So,
right,
um,
yeah.
but yeah, if anybody out there has some questions for Wayne, go ahead and get them in the chats now. Um, and if you are looking to get a little more information, if you've got some family or friends or any veterans that you're aware of that are in the California area out there, feel free to go out to the Facebook page or Instagram, Vet Together, and kind of see what he's about. Certainly, the more veterans that are aware of what you're doing and what you plan to do is going to make a big difference for some people. So uh, at this point, I guess we've pretty much answered all the questions, or you've answered all the questions that I have. So, are there any other thoughts that you want to leave everybody with?
Um, it's a difficult. There's when it comes to the veteran community and active duty, but when it comes to the veteran community, it's kind of um for some people, you're almost like stepping on eggshells because you don't know what to ask and what not to ask,
Right.
and et cetera, et cetera. So for some people, what I would suggest is don't ask them, how did you like it? You know, ask, hey, what's a happy memory you have from boot
Hmm.
camp or from something. Start with the happy memories because they're gonna talk. They're more willing. A veteran is more willing to talk about that than the negative side.
Right.
And usually, it takes a lot of trust to open up about that. So that's a piece of advice I give to some people who aren't used to dealing with veterans. Um,
And
but
that's really a valid point too,
mhm,
because the point is not to get them their hackles up, and get them
right,
into a defensive state of mind. It's
right,
to have a conversation.
right.
And I think that's one of the reasons, for me in beginning this channel was as an outlet for veterans to one come on and talk about their experiences in a way that was meaningful to them.
Hmm.
So like yourself as well as the resources side of things, because people may have tried different resources. They may have tried the VA. They may have looked at like
Hmm.
at the one time when you went into the VFW and you didn't have a great experience. And, maybe you wash your hands of things of that nature that just don't work and you don't want to try
Yeah.
them again. But maybe you come up with something as a guest on my show for a resource that somebody in the San Diego area hasn't tried,
Hmm.
and it might give them that moment of, what, maybe I'll try that, because what's the worst that can happen? It just doesn't work for me. But
Hmm.
they if they find something in there worthwhile, they're going to try it. And the nice thing about, with if there's anything nice about the internet, would be that no matter whether you're on the West Coast or the East Coast and being a veteran, you most of these resources are open to all of the veterans across the US.
Hmm.
It's obviously it's handier if you're in that local area, but you still
Right.
can contact people there, and network with other veterans that might
Right.
be on the West Coast or the East Coast, depending upon where you're at.
Right.
So that's important, that networking side of things, and knowing that. Um,
Right.
but
Well,
yes,
that old saying is, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm not seeing any additional questions. I want to make sure, of course, thank everybody out there in the comments, um, and say thank you for joining us tonight, and listening to Wayne's conversation with me. Please, please, please make sure you go out. And if you haven't already subscribed, hit that subscribe button, but also hit that thumbs up, that like button when the show ends, and put a quick comment in there. Even if it's just, a couple of thumbs up, just do that, because, it's YouTube's numbers game that they play. So we want to make sure that everybody's, that we get those numbers so that they know, we're here. And so make sure to do that. So, without, I guess, any further ado, if you want to hang tight for me, Wayne, I'm going to go ahead, throw some music on, and we're going to go ahead and start wrapping this up. Let's see what we got.
Perfect.
There we go. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on here. I definitely appreciate it.
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled to death that you were able to do this and to trust in a complete stranger, because we have never met, nor, I mean, we've only texted back and forth. So kind of exciting to meet you face to face, and to say directly to you, thank you very much for your sacrifice as well as your service to our country. And now your family. So
Yeah.
uh,
Definitely thank you for your support on that.
yes.